Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamada Yapurnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashyakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyaptadehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Chaitanyam Sarvagam Sarvam Sarvabhutaguhashayam Yat Sarva Vishayathitam Tasmai Sarvavide Namaha. Right now, the teacher is addressing this view of Bheda Kalpana, of that school of thought which thinks that the Veda, the entire Veda, can be properly, correctly explained or understood if you accept the Veda as well as Aveda in Brahman. In order to account for what our experiences are and what the Vedas say, our experience is that aham karta, aham bhokta, I'm a karta, I'm a bhokta, that is my pratyaksh anubhava, that's my direct experience. And Shruti says, Tattvamasi, aham brahma asmi. In the Upanishad section it says, aham brahma, that self is Brahman. So how to reconcile with these two contradictory views? By accepting both of them. That one, this is also right, that is also right. Bheda and Abheda. There is simultaneously Bheda in Brahman, where Brahman or Atma is thought to be Karta Bhokta, and Abheda, the Atma is thought to be Brahman, when without a second. So said that those people who think that Atma is Karta Bhokta as well as Atma is Abhinda, they have not understood the purport or the tatparya either of the Karma Kanda or the Jnana Kanda. Karma Kanda seems to accept the Kartritva, Bhoktritva of the Jivatma for the time being. Until a maturity will take place, until a knowledge will take place, until then, in the realm of ignorance, kartritva, bhoktritva is accepted as the basis of living a dharmic life. As a result of which, when we'll gain maturity, then we'll realize that kartritva, bhoktritva is not ultimately real. For that, the explanation is given how kartrutva, bhoktritva that we think we experience about the self is not the reality about the self, because whatever we experience is not real. For that, the example of a dream is presented as to how in a dream also we experience the world that appears to be real at that time. What it is the mind, like a cloth which is dyed with different colors. The dream, what one is experiencing is the mind, which alone assumes the forms of the subject and the object and the experience. The drashta, drashya, darshanam, all that we experience in dream, which in the dream thing is real. When we wake up, it turns out that it was all nothing but an appearance. Thus, the dream experience teaches us that this duality of the drashta, drashya, darshanam is nothing but one mind manifesting as these three. And therefore, in the waking also, this duality or this triputi of drashta, drashya, darshanam is an abhasa, an appearance. Just as the mind becomes all these three in the dream, the mind becomes all these three in the waking also. Therefore, you cannot cite your experience of kartrutva, bhoktritva as an evidence to arrive at the conclusion that Atma is really karta bhokta, because what you're experiencing is not the self but the abhasa, the appearance that the mind has created before us. And so the dream experience, Vedanting says that is a very important experience, where Atma, the self, can be understood clearly as distinct from the non-self. Because there it becomes very clear that the whole dream world is just an appearance assumed by the mind. So it is very clear that the drashta, drashya, darshanam, all of this is illuminated. And that Atma is illuminator, who is different from the illuminated. Therefore, the dream experience helps us understand the self in a manner similar to removing the sword from the scabbard. How separately, clearly we can see the sword as uninfluenced by the scabbard. So in the dream, you can understand the Atma clearly as uninfluenced by the Anatma, because the Anatma is drashta, drashya, darshanam. It's very clear to us that this is Anatma. It's an appearance. That may not be as clearly understood in the waking state. Therefore, the dream experience helps us. Tadvat Buddha Swayam Pravaha. The Buddha, the knower, the self is self-effulgent. So not only From the experience of dream, we can understand kartrutva, bhoktva is pratibhasa and not a reality about the self. But the teacher says that the Upanishad directly says शास्त्रात् अविरोधेनैव प्रत्येतुं शक्यत्वात्, that from the experience of dream we understood that the kartrutva bhoktrutva is mithya and therefore Atma is Satya, but the Upanishad clearly says Atma is Satya. Shuddheva Atma Brahmaiva iti, Shuddha Atma eva Atma Brahmaiva iti. Upanishad reveals that Atma is Brahman. See, from the analysis of the dream experience, we understood that the dream is an abhasa, pratibhasa, not real. And the Atma is the eliminator, and separate from that is what we arrive at from an experience of dream, understanding it. But that Atma is different, and Brahma alone is itself said by Upanishad. Therefore, there is no reason for you to arrive at or think that Atma is both Bhinna as well as Bhinna. And so the 12th verse said, let us read that verse. Apeshat pratibudhasya nyasya svabhavikam padam uktam netyadi vakyena kalpitasyapanetrana. Apeshat pratibudhasya jnasya. Jna, the conscious being. Apeshat pratibudhasya, the conscious being who woke up when he was shaken up. Sutau supta purusha, when that person was sleeping, that conscious being was sleeping. He was addressed by the various names. Bruhan Pandaravasa, Somam, Somarajan. He Bruhat, He Pandaravasa, He Soma, He Raja. So by these names he was addressed, these are the names of Prana, or Chandrama, who is the presiding deity of Prana. Meaning that the conscious, sleeping conscious being was addressed by the names of Prana. And Prana is very much awake in the deep sleep state. Therefore, if Prana was a conscious being or Prana was Atma, Prana would have heard and responded and would have woken up, did not wake up. Payanatu apishyamaha utthita. The conscious being did not wake up when addressed by the names of Prana and had to be woken up by repeatedly shaking his body. From this experiment, it is clear that Prana is not the conscious being. Also, of course, that the gross body is not the Atma, because gross body is very much alive and sitting and lying there and does not respond. Prana also is alive and does not respond. Therefore, these experiments of waking the sleeping person by shaking his body repeatedly clearly show that the body as well as prana, and prana means the subtle body, is not Atma. So this is one thing. Then what? Tasya apeshat pratibuddhasya. Nyasya tvam padarthasya swabhavikatam padam. Then what is the nature? What the conscious being is not is first clearly understood. That the gross body is not Atma, the subtle body is not Atma, then what is the essential nature of Atma? न इत्यादि वाक्येन अथात आदेशो नेति नेति इत्यादि वाक्येन. So by the vakya that Atma is not this, not this, not this. This is not Atma, this is not Atma, this is not Atma. This vipsa or this repetition सत्यस्य सत्यम प्राणावे सत्यम तेषामेष सत्यमिदन्तेन वाक्येन कल्पितस्य अध्यस्तस्य मूर्तामूर्त तद्वासना आश्रयस्य. So neti neti, this is not Atma, this is not Atma. Whatever can be indicated, this is not Atma. समस्त कारण कार्यात्मक उपाधि प्रतिषेध द्वारा. मूर्त is not Atma, Murta is not Atma, Sat is not Atma, Asat is not Atma. Therefore, this vipsa, neti neti, enables us to understand that the entire karya karana upadhi, karya karanatmaka upadhi, the Vyashti upadhi is there, Samashti upadhi is there. Vyashti, the karya, gross body is karya, karana, subtle body, karana, ignorance. Similarly, at the Samashti level, all of this is not Atma, not Brahman. And so this is Nishedhatmakam Vakyam. Therefore, the whole gross and subtle world is declared as not Atma, not Atma, not Atma. By saying that Atma is devoid of Karya, Karana, meaning devoid of all the Visheshanas, all the attributes. So this Vakya, when we deliberate upon that, this Neti Neti Vakya, what is it that it really reveals to us? It invites us to negate whatever is negatable, whatever can be addressed, or whatever appears as idam, neti is naidam. Whatever can be objectified is not Atma. And in order to make sure that everything that is objectified is included, not only the karya, the effect which we can objectify, but the cause which is unmanifest, which may not be object, that also is included. That's not Atma. So this one leads us to Brahmani, so parivasatena. That ultimately leads us to, helps us arrive at that which is not subject to negation. What is idam? Is object. Is something that is illumined, jadam, achetanam, paraprakashyam. So whatever is paraprakasham, achetanam, jadam, drishyam, all of this is negated by neti neti. That leaves what is saprakasham, which cannot be negated, because you cannot get rid of that from your consciousness. What is meant by negation is whatever it is that you can get rid of from your consciousness. You have freedom to withdraw your consciousness from that. Your freedom to withdraw your consciousness or awareness of all the gross body and the gross world, the subtle body, the subtle world, You can even withdraw yourself from the causal world and what remains is the self-effulgent self, and that is Brahman. So why neti neti? When Sitaji is asked, who is your husband? Sitaji says, one that is fair is not my husband. Leaving the one who is dark, it's my husband. That's a Shruti by the prakriya of neti neti. Why? Because that fair and dark both are experience, understand? If the Shama or the dark is not experienced, and then you say this fair is not my husband, then lives what? Shunyam. That's what they think. That this neti neti prakriya leads us to shunyam. It would lead us to shunyam if we did not experience the fair one, a dark one. We are experiencing both, except that we are experiencing one as object, other one as subject. So you can turn away your eyes or attention from that which is objectified because you are eliminating them. So turn your eyes, close your eyes to what is objectified. And what remains from which you cannot turn away, which is your own self, that's what it leads to. So Brahmani Pariyavasitena, this Vakya, this statement Neti Neti, helps the student to ultimately recognize the self-effulgent self as Brahman. And what can you negate? What is Kalpitam? That is called Satyam, which is Abadhitam, which is non-negatable. So when the Shruti asks you to negate Neti Neti, then it also says, is Kalpitam, therefore you can negate it. So verse 13 says, Maharaja Dayo Lokaha Mayyadvat Prakalpitaha Swapne Tadvadvayam Vidya Rupam Vasanaya Saha. Yadvad Maharaja Dayo Lokaha Mai Prakalpitaha Swapne. Yadvad, just as Swapne in the dream, Maharaja Dayo Lokaha. Loka is the word of the karma phalam. Maharaja, I am Maharaja, that's what is meant there. The dream, this person experienced himself as a Maharaja, I am Maharaja. And then I have a whole retinue. The dream, this Maharaja is taking a walk in his own kingdom, which is retinue. So this is a dream where I am the Maharaja and I am going about, walking about leisurely in my own realm, own kingdom with my retinue. So this description shows that it is mithya. Not only that you recognize this as mithya even when you wake up. When you think of the dream, it is very clear that this Maharaja is imagining himself as Maharaja. Number one, or anybody imagines him as Maharaja. The body is lying in the bed. And then there is Maharaja is there, and then the minister and all other attendants that are all going along with him in the dream or whenever in that experience, they're all sleeping in their own places. The king is sleeping in this bed and the minister in another bed and so on and so forth. They're all sleeping in their own respective places. They could not be simultaneously be sleeping and not awake. That what is outside is all dark because it is night, and what you experience it is all bright, it is day. So what you experience in dream when you compare with what really is there, it's very clear there is kalpitam. Maharaja devlokaha yadvat mai prakalpitaha swapne. And so not only that you recognize swapna as mithya when you wake up, because there's no adequate space, etc., to experience dream. And still some people contend that the dream experience is real, that in fact Maharaja is taking round in the city. But that itself experience reveals that it is not real because the Maharaja is lying here and his retinue is sleeping elsewhere. So it's not from the stand that thus when we analyze the dream experience it becomes very clear that it's all kalpitam, it's all project, imagine. That means the whole dvayam, the dvaita, the duality of the subject, object, experience, all mithya. And therefore, the duality of the subject, object, experience that we find in waking also is mithya. Tadvat dvayam vidyat rupam vasanaya. Similarly also. So in the dream, not only Maharaja, all of these are experiences a kalpana, but what brings about that kalpana, the vasanas, which like color the mind, therefore the Maharaja and the retinue, the vasana from there which the Maharaja got created, and the mind and with the vasana, subtle body and with vasanas have their location. Everything is mithya. So also in the waking, Ata na swapnopalabdam paramartham, therefore don't think that you are actually going out someplace and experiencing is all projection. तथा वासनाश्रय लिंग शरीर सहितस्य मूर्तामूत रूप स्थूलस्यापि तथा च in a manner similar to that vasana ashraya linga sharira, the linga shariram or the subtle body which is the vasana ashrayam linga shariram which is the locus of all the vasanas sahitasya मूर्तामूत रूप स्थूलस्यापि. Just as in the dream, the murta, amurta, all of that was projected. So mithya, along with the vasanas on account of which it got projected, along with the subtle body which is the locus of the vasana. So also in waking state, the murta jagat that you experience at the cosmic and the individual level, the vasanas from which this jagat is created, the subtle body which is the locus of the vasana, all of this is mithya. Drugatmani, Kalpitatvam, all of this is projected in the drashta. Tad drishyatvad upannam. Yad drishyam tat kalpitam. Swapna prapancha jagrat prapanchasyavi pratyagatmani kalpitatve siddhe. So this is very Upanishad clearly tells us that Jagrat Prapancha also is very much a projection, just as the Swapna Prapancha is, because in the Swapna the world appears very similar to Jagrat. The kind of experience one has in the dream appears very real and tangible to the dreamer. And therefore, what is experienced as real and tangible is mithya in the dream, so also what appears real and tangible here also is projected. If you like, you say there is projection of the cosmic mind, this is projection of the dream is a projection of individual mind, but projection nevertheless. Therefore, Pratyak tattva abhignasya karma sambhava. The one who knows the mithyatvam, tat sarva vishayatitam, that tat brahma sarva vishayatitam, it transcends all the vishayas because it elimines the vishayas. Pratyak tattva abhignasya, one who has known pratyak tattva, the tattva, the essential nature of pratyak of the self, as consciousness, as Brahman, karma sambhava. For that person, it is not possible to perform any deliberate action, put it this way. So the wise person who knows the self as Brahma, he can no more perform any karma willfully. Meaning that the free will of the wise person disappears, there is no free will, which may look like like slavery to a modern person. Because free will is considered as the mark of freedom. Have the freedom to do things, not to do things in whichever way I want. Vedanta says no. The need for you to exercise free will, there is also a need. The exercise of free will, if it comes from a need, that also is a need. It's bondage. Therefore, and what is the purpose of free will? To change things. Either to change the surrounding, which I think are not comfortable, convenient, conducive, or to change myself, who I think is not all right as I am. So when there is dissatisfaction with the way things are, with existing thing, with the present, then one exercises free will to change things, to make it, to create a comfortable situation, what is hoped to be comfortable. So karma, sakama karma, desire prompted action, has its origin in the dissatisfaction of the present, which requires one to use the free will to accomplish that objective. But when there is total satisfaction with oneself, and therefore total satisfaction with what is, then there is no motivation at all to change anything because there is nothing that one is uncomfortable with. Neither one's own self nor with the world. That motivation to change comes from a discomfort caused by a sense of dissatisfaction. And that is the nature of, that is the knowledge of self. When one as long as there is identification with the non-self, like body, prana, indriya, mind, intellect, so long, one cannot be free from a sense of smallness and dissatisfaction with oneself. And secondly, as long as one gives reality to what one experiences, when I give reality to what I experience, automatically the division is created between the experiencer I and what I experience. And the division creates in me a sense of confined, limited, isolated, separated, excluded, right away. And therefore, dissatisfaction with myself, dissatisfaction with what I experience. So ignorance creates the dissatisfaction. which is the motivating factor for doing something so as to become free from the dissatisfaction. And since the conclusion is that the dissatisfaction is because of the world around me, or because of this upadhi, therefore I go about changing them. When it is understood that dissatisfaction is merely a notion, not a reality about anything, there is no cause for dissatisfaction about myself, nor any cause for dissatisfaction about the world. Because what world is also is Brahman in that costume. What I am also is Brahman or Purna in this costume. If that Purnatvam is recognized, there is no motivation to change anything. Then there is no karma. So therefore, pratyak tattva abhignasya karma sambhava. One who is abhigna, who is very well knowledgeable about one's own self, and therefore about everything. So the next verse is Dehalingatmana karyaha Vasana rupina kriyaha Neti netyatma rupatvad Name karya kriya kvachita. Vasana rupina dehalingatmana kriyaha karyaha karmani pravogain. Kriyaha karyaha. The actions have to be performed or are performed. By whom? By Dehalingatma. Third case. The one is Dehalingatma. What is Dehalingatma? Deharupena tadabhinanena tadatmatapannena. One who attains the state of Deha, Dehatmata, that Dehoham, or Lingatmana, Lingatmaham. I am the gross body, I am the subtle body, that Abhimanam, that notion about the self arising from identification is called Dehalingatma by this person. Now what happens is that this doesn't stop here. This process does not simply stop with identification of the gross and subtle bodies. The notion that I am so and so, it doesn't stop there. Because that notion, as we said, creates a dissatisfaction out of oneself, creates a desire to become free from the sense of smallness, results into actions to fulfill that desire, creates the results of action, which create reaction. Because whenever an action is performed with a desire, with an agenda, then the result of the outcome will create in me a reaction. If that result is satisfactory, then also there is reaction that I become overjoyed, elated. I'm happy because I'm happy with myself, understand? When I become successful, I'm happy because I'm happy with myself. And when the outcome is unsuccessful, I'm unhappy again with myself. That we should know. And so, when I'm happy with myself, I want to repeat that experience. Unhappy with myself, I want to change that experience. So both harsha and shoka, elation and depression, both of them again cause a reaction in terms of desire, either to acquire something or get rid of something. Desire again, karma, karma reaction, harsha shoga, desire, vasana rupina. This is how the vasanas or the tendency of performing karma also are built into me. Therefore, that vasana of reacting to what is not except pleasant to me, or reacting to what is pleasant to me with harsha and shoka is a vasana. That vasana creates a desire, is also a vasana. The desire creates action, also is a vasana. This habitually happen. This thing, this whole sequence of event happens habitually. Therefore, a person never thinks that this needs to be addressed. Therefore, karma pravritti nimittena avicchinnena paramparaya, the whole sequence, unbroken sequence of harsha and shoka, which creates the desire, which creates the action karma, which creates karma phala, which creates the reaction of harsha shoka. And that's how avicchinnena. So this whole sequence is unbroken sequence. The vasana rupina, that word is explained in a very interesting way. Vasanaha rupayitum sanchetum shilamasya asti. Not vasana rupi, one who is of the nature of vasana. Atma is not of the nature of Atma. Vasana rup, so rupayitum sanchetum. One whose nature it is to accumulate vasanas. Accumulate these habits of thinking and reacting and doing. Everything is habitual. When I confront a situation, habitually I react with harsha shoka. Then I habitually react with having, with a desire. Habitually react with karma. So the whole life is, vasana is reaction, not action. Habitual. So not only animals live a life which is habitual, most human beings also live the life that is habitual. Prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyade. Prakritim bhutani prakritim yanti. All the beings follow their prakriti, nature, which can be called vasana, habit. So this is kriyaha karya. It is this entity who is number one, Dehalingatma, meaning one who is identified, again habitually identified the gross and subtle bodies, on account of which one entertains various notions about oneself, on account of which there are desires and actions and results. So habit, vasana. So this is the description, beautiful description of the Jivatma. Ignorant one. And usually a person never questions all of this, takes for granted that this is the reality about myself. Kriyaha karyaha. That person is karyaha, is impelled to perform actions. When there is desire within oneself, then one loses the freedom not to do something. That desire will impel the person to do things. And secondly also, the sense of individuality that is created from the identification of Deha and Linga. Even if that doesn't create desire right away, what it creates is sense of individuality. sense of being a part of the whole, sense of being part of a scheme or a setup, and makes me sensitive that hey, I am part of this setup who is supported by this setup, and therefore there is an urge from within oneself to also contribute back to compensate for the benefit that I am receiving. That's called kartavya. So two kinds of urge is there. One is simply dehalingatmana kriyaha karya. The one identified deha and linga, gross and subtle body, that itself causes sense of individuality, an identity that I am so and so, and that identity itself creates the idea that I must, this is my duty. So idea of duty is the result of identity. Brahmanoham, Purushoham, I am father, I am mother. Right away, this is what I should do. So if kriyaha karyaha, if the kriya is the kartavya karma, then also that's what happens to an individual, a conscientious individual. One who is sensitive or conscious about the favor that one is receiving, right away there is a urge from within to return that favor. And secondly, the vasana creates a desire over and above the sense of individuality, the habit of looking upon myself as incomplete, therefore desire to become complete, and therefore the actions and so forth. The story of, see in these two words, the whole story of the individual is described. How therefore karma, kartavya karma and sakama karma, both of them become the way of life for an ignorant person. So kriyaha karyaha. This person who is ignorant of aviveki has to perform, or that's the karma is for this person. So when the Vedas enjoin the karma, it is for this aviveki. So he performs karma because he is mandated by the scriptures, and he performs karma because he is impelled by his mind. So two forces of impelling are there. When the scriptures mandates him, so he feels impelled, and his mind mandates him, so he feels impelled. So by the compulsion created by scriptures, the kartavya karma, and by the compulsion created by the scriptures, the sakama karma. It's quite all right. Neti neti atma rupatvat. However, now I'm no more that. I'm no more the lingatma. Because neti, first na, declares that dehatma I am not. See, it is not deha that is negated. It's dehatmatvam that is negated. Well, deha is negated by saying that it is not real. But dehatma, the one identifying the deha, I am not that. Lingatma, I am not. Niti nitya ityadina ukta atma surupatvat. Therefore, who am I? Ukta atma swarupaham. Brahmatma swarupaham. Name karya kriya kvachit. Na kvachit, nowhere. Kriya karya, do I have to perform an action? And so nowhere is what? Say kvachit swapneva jagareva. In swapna also if there is knowledge, then there also there is no duty. And waking there is no duty. So ultimately this whole duty is also a vasana. And by working with the vasana and waking state, their vasana goes away in dream state also. So a time will come in a dream also, there is no kartavya. Now continuing the 15th verse, the Tika says, Ajnana vilasita dehabhimanadeva karma iti dehalingatmana karyaha kriyaha. The kriyas, the duties and other actions are to be performed by the one identified with a sthula and sukshma sharira, which is what? Ajnana vilasita. The sthula, sukshma, sharira, both of them are the projections due to ignorance. Abhimanadeva, an identification with this projected things, karma. So that is what dehalinga atmana karyaha vasana rupina kriyaha is explained as ajnana vilasita deha abhimanadeva karma. Deha abhimanadeva karma. Because of identification of deha, or the sense of identity that arises on account of taking the stool sukshma as myself, then but because of that there is karma. This is what I said. Then what? Tasya jnana mulatve siddhe. So karma is a result of a notion, understand, about the self. The identity that I am so and so is a notion about myself arising from ignorance of the self. And karma is a result of that identity. So karma is the product of ignorance. So first product of ignorance is the identification with what I am not, sthula sukshma deha. As a result, there is a sense of individuality, I am so and so identity. As a result of that, there is a sense of duty or there is desire. As a result of that, there is karma. So karma is product of ignorance removed by a few steps. But nevertheless, karma is a product of ignorance. Karma is product of ignorant self, and which is the product of ignorance? Only ignorant person feels impelled to perform duty, or ignorant person feels impelled to fulfill desires. तस्य अज्ञान मूलत्वे तस्य कर्मणः अज्ञान मूलत्वे, that ajnana moolam yasya, that karma, ajnana is the root of this karma. Karma is rooted in ignorance, born of ignorance. Siddhe. So by saying dehalinga atmana karya ha kriya, it is very clear that karma has its moolam or root in ignorance. न तेन मोक्षासा कर्तव्या मोक्षाशा. Therefore, tena karmana, by that karma, there cannot be any asha or hope of moksha. Moksha is a result of knowledge. And karma, that is product of ignorance, is not opposed to ignorance. So you cannot hope to gain moksha as a result of karma. Meaning that karma cannot be the outcome of it. Moksha cannot be the outcome of a karma. Because karma itself is a product of ignorance. Avirodhita karma. Therefore, since karma is avirodhi of ajnana, therefore, na vidya vinivartate, karma cannot eliminate avidya. Only vidya can eliminate tejas timirat sanghavat. So vidya vidyam nihanteva tejas timirat sanghavat. Only vidya knowledge can dispel ignorance like the light dispels darkness. Therefore, na mokshasa kartavya. Therefore, one should not entertain the hope that this or that karma will bring me moksha. That hope one should not entertain. So verse 15 says, न ततो मृतता शास्ते कर्मणो ज्ञान हेतुतः मोक्षस्य ज्ञान हेतुत्वात् न तदन्यदपेक्षते. न tatah, all. So the pronouns are used, therefore we should know what that pronoun is used for. Na tatah means karmana. From that, because karya, kriya, kvachita, the earlier words ended with kriya or karma, therefore tatah. Na tatah tatah tasmat, fifth case, karmana. From that karma. Tikakara says tasmat karmana hetoho. Karmana, which case is that? Fifth case. In what sense? Hetu. So heto. So fifth case is in the sense of the reason, cause. So karmana hetoho. Because of karma, amurtata asha. One word, one compound word, amurtata asha. So amurtatayaha it should be, that's how it should be. Amurtatayaha asha, amurtata asha. Is it which compound? Tatpurusha. Sixth case, sixth, Shashti Tatpurusha. Amrutata asha. Amrutata asha means Amrutata asha means Amrutatayaha asha. Asha, the hope of Amrutata, Amrutatvam, immortality or moksha. So karmana Amrutata asha nasti. From karma, because of karma, there cannot be Amrutata or moksha. Amrutata asha, Amrutata. The state of Amrutatvam means moksha bhavasya, the state of liberation. Asha, assumption, expectation nasti. From karma or because of karma, there cannot be any asha or hope of amrutata, amrutatvam or moksha. That's the statement. Pratigna. Na tatah amrutata ashasti. What's the reason? When you make the pratigna, hetu says kutah. What's the reason why you say that? Ajnana hetutah. So karmano is already there, by the way. Na tatah, na karm tatah karmanah amrutata ashasti. Pratigna. What's the reason? Hetu? Ajnana hetutah kutah. So ask, what for a reason? So all this tasil pratyaya by the way, kutah. Kim? So kutah. For what reason? Fifth case. Ajna. This is also tasil pratyaya. Ajnana hetutah. Becomes simple, because that's how it fits in the meter. That is why. Not that the author doesn't know, how to construct a sentence, but ajnana hetutah, ajnana hetutvat. But that will not fit in the meter. Karmano jnana hetutvat should have been all right. But anyway, so it's a hetukatvat, in fact. Not hetutvat, hetukatvat. Ajnana hetutah, ajnana hetukatvat, ajnana hetu. Yes, yatat. So karma being that of which the hetu is ajnanam. Karma being that of which the hetu or the cause is ignorance. How? Avivekapurvakatvat karma ityartha. How do you say that ignorance is the hetu or cause of karma? Avivekapurvakatvat. So that ajnana hetutah, that's the hetu. You explain as aviveka karmana aviveka purvakatvat, because karma is always preceded by aviveka. What is aviveka? Atma and Atma aviveka. Meaning Atma Buddhi and Anatma, the mutual superimposition that takes place, aviveka, which creates in me a sense of individuality, sense of identity, which creates a sense of duty or a desire. So therefore, whether it is sakama karma, even kartavya karma also, aviveka purvakatvat, it is preceded by aviveka. What is aviveka? Adhyasa, seeing what is not there, seeing the self in non-self, seeing the attributes of non-self in self. Never wrong notion about myself is a reason for karma, not the true knowledge of myself. So what? Now you said na tata amrutata ashasti karmana na tata karmana amrutata ashasti. Agnya hetu. So how does that explain? So Tikakara explains. Jadayoho ajnana karmanoho virodha abhavat. What can eliminate something that is opposed to that? The moment a cat comes, the mouse is eliminated, runs away. Because these opposites cannot coexist. When the light comes, the darkness is dispelled because they cannot coexist. So also when viveka comes, aviveka cannot coexist, cannot remain. So here the darkness is not merely darkness, but of the nature of aviveka. Darkness is not merely of the nature of the jnana abhava, but then it is viparita jnanam. Aviveka means viparita jnanam. The false notion about oneself. So this karma is product of aviveka, false notion about myself, which in turn is the product of ignorance. Therefore, karma is nothing but the tangible manifestation of ignorance. So, jadayoho ajnana karma virodha bhavat. So, karma also is nothing but manifestation of ajnana, but ajnana also is ajnana, therefore they are not opposed to each other. Karma being product of ignorance is not opposed to ignorance. The Bengal cannot eliminate gold, regardless of what it does, because the product of gold. Therefore, virodha abhavat. Bengal is not opposed to gold, because it is a product of gold. Therefore, therefore, karma cannot eliminate ajnanam. Ajnana nivritti mokshe. One thing is that, what is moksha? Ajnana nivritti rupa. Moksha is the nature of the cessation or dispelling of ignorance. All this is established earlier. It's already established that what is called a bondage is purely the product of ignorance, nothing more than ignorance. And therefore, simply knowledge can dispel ignorance and the bondage, notion of bondage born of ignorance. Meaning that for moksha you must remove ignorance. Why? Because the bondage is the product of ignorance. How? Bondage is notion, born of aviveka, born of ignorance. Therefore, what is bondage is the tangible manifestation of ignorance. Karma also is tangible manifestation of ignorance, and bondage also is the tangible manifestation. So ignorance cannot dispel ignorance. Ignorance can be dispelled by something that is opposed to that, that is knowledge. Therefore, ajnana nivritti rupo moksha, moksha is nature of the dispelling of ignorance. And karma being product of ignorance, or nothing but and the form of ignorance cannot remove ignorance. Mokshe karma asha karya. Mokshe karma asha, therefore, one cannot hope that moksha will be attained by karma. Okay, we'll continue. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashyakrutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyaptadehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.